Well, this is another case of a band that's been introduced to me through my fans, so thank you guys for recommending this. This is the first work of theirs that I've heard, even though they have released a lot, like I believe 10 prior to this, so I'm not going to be able to give a full insight review of how this compares to their past work, but what I can do is give you my thoughts on the current work that we have here, so let's dive into this.
There are small dark lines in my heart tonight, from all those times that I crossed the line.
Legends of the Shire by Threashold. So Threashold is another one of those bands that has a lot of discography behind them. They started their career back in the early 90s, dropping their first album in 1993, and since then they have been putting out album after album after album. Now, as I said at the beginning, I haven't heard of any of their music prior to this, so all I can really say is how I feel about this current album of Legends of the Shire. And this is also the first album to feature Glenn Morgan's on the album since I believe their second album of, what is it, Psychedelicession? Anyway, their second album. He replaced Damian Wilson, who was their past lead singer. Now again, I'm not quite sure how it fits and how that dynamic has shifted, but what we have here is some pretty good times. I'm going to get into my first real issue that I have with this album right off the get-go, just so that I can get it off my chest, and that is the length. It is a 2-discer. I'm sure it's got a really interesting kind of concept throughout it. I'm not really feeling the concept all that much throughout the lyrics and throughout the musical themes. As I said, double-discer, both discs are just over the 40-minute mark for a nice 80-minute piece, but I will at least applaud them for double disking it to sectioning off this album into bite-sized chunks. This helped me digest the album, but because I still listened to the album as a whole, it was a lot to take in, and it didn't work to its advantage. Let's get to some of the good parts, though. The Shire Part 1, Small Dark Lines, and The Man Who Saw Through Time, these 3 tracks open up the album beautifully. I love how it really sets down that framework for the album, in that the Shire gives us more of the mellow side of the band, the much more kind of that 80s ballad, hair ballad at least, and Small Dark Lines gives us that rocking feel that we'll be introduced to later on in the album, that really punchy, meaty hooks. But for me, it wasn't until we got to The Man Who Saw Through Time that I really started to groove along. Like, I really devoured this track. I love where this song goes. It is the longest track at 11 minutes, almost 12. I love the harmonizations that the lead vocalist brings to the table this time around. I really enjoy that chorus of The Man Who Saw Through Time. It reminds me very much of, say, like the Spock's Beard era of Brief Nocturnes and Sleepless Incidents. Just the way that they're able to build up the song and bring it to a great plateau and really kind of play in there and then go back down into the song again and really revisit that. Like, I really enjoyed that.
Eyes beholding, for now he knew too much. The man who saw through time, all the things he thought he'd done.
Now, unfortunately, the next 3 tracks off of this disc, the closing tracks, I guess, of Trust the Process, The Stars and Satellites, and On the Edge, for me, it doesn't have a whole lot to hang on to. Like, The Stars and Satellites, I tuned out completely. I don't know what it is with this, because sure, they're playing a lot of really great music, but there's nothing really to hang on to, and unfortunately, that's also the playing style that we get within the entirety of the second disc. And within the second disc, it starts off with the Shires Part 2, and because I streamed this album on Spotify, it wasn't until I started to, sit down and get into the music that I realized, oh, this is Part 2. Just because On the Edge doesn't really end very, like, succinctly, like, it doesn't have that cutoff point that a first disc should have. It just kind of, okay, we're just halfway through the album. The second disc does open up with the Shire Part 2, and it gives a little bit of a breather, and this is where we have a little bit more of that Threshold. And Snowblind does do a fairly comparable way of opening up the second disc in being a little bit slower to build up to, and I think we needed that to get into that song. And because it takes its time to build up, it has that foundation of the song so that when they get to the meatier parts, we can appreciate them a little bit more. But the next couple of tracks, unfortunately, kind of follow the suit to like how the first disc ended. What is it? Subliminal Freeway and State of Independence. These two tracks just, again, they leave me wanting more. They don't really hang on. They just kind of are here. They don't really cover any new ground. And when I'm listening to it with all the tracks that precede it, I'm not really getting too much out of it. Now, luckily, we do have the Superior Machine. And at least with Superior Machine, we do have a really nice kind of play out near the end part. Like, this is where we got that meaty guitar licks, we've got that really great synthesizer providing a great atmosphere, and it's coming together really, really nicely in the end. It's really that play out, that little jam session that I really, really groove along to. And then the last three tracks kind of close off the album. We have the Shire Part 3, we have Lost in Translation, the second longest track off of this, and Swallowed. So the Shire Part 3 is basically just the continuation of the first two. Lost in Translation, I feel like the band was trying to make this really meaty epic, and it just didn't quite work. Like, especially with a lot of the time that we've had up to this point, I didn't really feel it. I didn't really grab onto it. They were lamenting out into this grand, luscious forest of the Shire, but it didn't really resonate. Finally, Shallow, that closed off this track. I really don't have too many words that I haven't already said. It just kind of was a little bit on the bland side. So, I mean, overall, I know this is a long-winded way of saying that this album really didn't connect with me. I thought it was very top-heavy, because those first three tracks really knocked it out of the park for me. Like the Shire Part 1, Small Dark Lines, and The Man Who Saw Through Time. These three tracks are really great pieces. Unfortunately, the rest of the album just kind of faltered. I think had they condensed this into one album and really polished off the remaining songs, they could have had an amazing work. Unfortunately, they just have an alright album. Really great start, but a really weak finish. You know, overall, it's still an alright time. It's one that I would recommend for anybody that likes this type of progressive metal music. I'm wavering between skipping and streaming, but I still say give it a stream, give it a chance. Those first three tracks are really great. The rest just kind of peter out, so you can kind of tune out after that. So that's about it. What did you guys think of the 11th studio album from Threashold, The Legends of the Shire? Let me know by commenting down below. How does this also stack up with their past discography? Because, as I said, I'm coming into it new, so let me know how it stacks up by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching once again. I'm just doing a little bit of an end card here. It's December, which means I've got a notes review community survey going on. I've left that link down below, so go fill that out. It's a census. It's just to let me know a little bit more about yourself. I've got a couple fun links there for other videos to check out, as well as to subscribe, so definitely check those out, as well as some social media things down below. Thank you guys once again. Notes out.